r/askreddit, what is the most unexpected thing you've seen live on TV? The reporter standing at a 45-degree angle, holding onto the street sign for dear life in a wind/rainstorm as he was reporting. And the two dudes casually walking past, not leaning whatsoever and without difficulty. You just reminded me of the one where the lady weather reporter was sitting in a canoe with paddle and two men walked right by her in what was obviously ankle-deep water. Her canoe was basically touching the ground. LOL. Edit, found it? Link. Have you got a clip? Were the dudes hardcore or the reporter a fraud? I was watching football, soccer, a few years ago and the referee stopped play for a foul. The slow-mo replay showed the fouling player grab the other player's shorts as he stepped across him, and used them to try to stop his momentum. The shorts stretched a long way, exposing his penis, which then proceeded to flap around in slow-mo, for about 5 seconds, whilst the commentators pretended it wasn't happening. Finally, something that isn't a total downer. Al Capone's bald had nothing in it, except the last fleeting fragments of Geraldo's dignity. Anderson Silva's leg snapping like a twig. Whoa, in 2013. I never watched any fights, but I lived in Brazil at the time and that was on the news all the time. I physically cringe remembering that scene. Poor Anderson. Hostage situation during the news. The news presenter was talking when an armed man walked in and took them hostage. It was wild. In the UK, a TV personality and her son who is disabled were on a live TV show. From what I recall, the topic being discussed was online bullying. When her son was asked about what to say to these bullies, his response was, "Hello you cunts." Absolute classic British TV right there. A plane flying into a New York skyscraper. A second plane flying into a New York skyscraper. People jumping out of that skyscraper. Seeing a plane flying into a New York skyscraper in my first grade class. Back in the late 90s there was a short-lived sport called slam ball. Essentially, basketball played on trampolines. It was awesome. People were dunking from 12 feet in the air. They would cross the court in 3 bounces. The tactics were amazing. I had no interest in sports at the time, but this shit was fun to watch. Like the best exhibition game you've ever seen. Except one time, Link, this dude snapped his foot off. Like. Off. I watched like 15 seconds of that Link and closed it. That's enough of that for me. Deleted. When I was a kid I was watching the evening news. A politician came to the microphone with a manila envelope. Said hello to everyone, then reached into the envelope and pulled out a revolver and put it under his chin and blew his head off. On live TV. R. Bud Dwyer. He was the Pennsylvania state treasurer who had just been convicted of taking bribes. He was to be sentenced the next day when he killed himself on live TV. Mike Tyson biting Evander Holyfield's ear. My favorite thing about that is that no one really complained about it. Everyone shrugged and thought, fair enough lad. Just a couple of weeks ago, dude jumping out of a stolen cop car he was driving at 45 miles per hour, smacking his head on the asphalt, because physics, killing himself on live TV. CNN showing the live bombings overhead during Desert Storm was pretty nutty. Waco, Desert Storm, baby Jessica. All live for young me. Indiana Pacers players fighting Detroit Pistons fans. Edit, I remember I was in Florida on a trip to Disney World with family. My cousin and I wanted to watch SportsCenter, but it wasn't on until after this game. We figured might as well watch the end of this. Ironically, my dad and uncle got in a huge argument beforehand. When they saw this on TV they just stopped arguing and watched. They were in shock. Malice at the Palace. I was there when Kanye West said on a live charity event that George Bush didn't like black people. Mike Myers was speechless. Asterisk edit to say, now that I think about it, I was there when he interrupted Taylor Swift, too. I had the same look on my face as I did during the George Bush incident. Link. This is such a weird clip. It's like he's saying things the instant they pop into his head. Compared to Myers, who sounds like he's reading a prompter. In 2015, a reporter and her cameraman were gunned down on live TV by a former employee of the station. Still get sick to my stomach when I think about it. Her husband was also employed by the station and was watching. That's what stuck with me. That shot of the gunman's shoes when the camera falls to the ground fucked me up. Link. The O.J. Simpson Bronco chase. They interrupted the NBA playoffs to show it live instead of the game. It was surreal. I watched Randy Johnson hitting a fucking dove midair with a fastball. That poor bird exploded. He memorialized it as a logo for his photography. Link. Christian Eriksen legit collapsing and dying on a soccer pitch only to be revived and make the most epic comeback the following season. Christian Eriksen dying, and then being revived. Live shots of the chest compressions were a poor broadcasting choice. I lived in Finland at the time and watched it at a bar with a bunch of Finns excited for their first Euro game ever, and that excitement going to dying off pretty quickly. O.J. Simpson's white Ford Bronco being pursued, slowly, by LAPD. I was 6 years old, but I remember watching the chase on all these TV monitors in Radio Shack with my stepdad. The killing of Lee Harvey Oswald. My parents were horrified that I, an elementary school kid, watched a man get shot and killed on live television. Odd, because I watched TV westerns all the time. The most recent thing I can remember is basically watching Damar Hamlin die on a football field and then watching a multitude of commentators talk about if the game should continue. Yep, in my lifetime it was the Challenger shuttle exploding on live TV while watching it as a kid in grade school. The O.J. chase, trial, and verdict in high school. Then of course, last but not least, September 11th WTC attacks while in college. I remember seeing the hit and not thinking much of it. I saw the docs run on the field and assumed it was for a play I didn't see. It's absolutely insane to me that he died in the field. It's even more insane they were able to save his life. I'm so glad he ended up recovering. Besides the Will Smith slap, that fly landing on Mike Pence's head, and it stayed on for like 2 minutes. I remember my dad and I just burst into laughter as soon as that happened. Rudy Giuliani's fake hair dripping into his face is on that level for me. That fly was famous for about a week. Longer than its life. The legacy lives on. Saw a politician take a dildo to the face. Janet Jackson's Arela. Edit, this did not warrant referral to the Reddit crisis line, really feeling the love, y'all. Hahaha, you'll never forget I was at a church youth group watching the game surrounded by 12-year-olds and youth pastors. It went awfully quiet there for a bit. In the Netherlands we have a yearly tradition to celebrate the sitting king/queen, don't ask me why, and there will be a whole parade with performances and a lot of people there. This will be live on TV and a lot of people watch it from home. In 2009 there was this guy that managed to get past the security line with his car and he drove into a huge group of people and kids in front of the royal family. 8 people died because of it. World Series earthquake was wild. Saw and felt that one live as well. Unforgettable. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploding into the Florida sky. Watched my longtime childhood friend/neighbor have an accident on live TV and subsequently died. X Games 2013, and I suppose he really died 1 week later in a coma, but the incident was broadcast and shown live. The headbutt during the 2006 World Cup final, I already knew Italy would win when that happened. Lee Harvey Oswald being shot. I was going to say that and then I started doubting myself, like did I just see the photos later? But no, that really happened. I kept thinking about that teacher who was chosen for the Challenger and how her students probably watched her die. They gathered all of us into our lunchroom in 2nd grade and hyped us up, then it exploded. There's a great documentary on Netflix called Challenger, The Final Flight. Just heartbreaking. Return to Space is a pretty good semi-sequel.